While the next generation of tech leaders have a big role to play and are often leading the way in entrepreneurship and innovation, highly adept and capable when using and innovating with technology, the next generation need to be actively engaged within discourse and shaping technology. To explore this in further detail, I'm delighted to be joined by Mary Fifita, the Senior Director of Corporate Development APAC at Kacific Broadband Satellites and the founder of Pacific Professionals Network. Come on up, Mary. Thank you. Now, as an Australian next generation tech leader of Pacifica heritage, what do you conceptualise as the key opportunities and challenges for the region, and how can the tech sector solve those challenges?
Thank you, Nina. Look, I think as we've heard from all the previous speakers, they've set a really good context for exactly what the strategic competition looks like in the region between the East and the West. And so there are considerable challenges, but this is also a moment of singular opportunity for the Pacific Islands. As Australians, what we need to understand is that the Pacific Islands do view this competition as an opportunity from which they can take advantage. So we absolutely cannot take the region for granted. Climate security and resilient connectivity are top of mind for the region, and technology will play an important role in any of the solutions. To delve into the challenges, I just wanted to share a family experience. Like most Pacific Islanders, I have a massive family, and hundreds of cousins, uncles, aunties, and we're all very close. And so there is constant chatter across WhatsApp groups, Facebook Messenger, Instagram pages. And so when the underwater volcano erupted in Tonga last year, it was one of the most traumatic periods for my family. To see the satellite imagery of the ash cloud and then hear all the reporting about how it was the worst or largest explosion since about 1883 was just traumatic. And the trauma was amplified by the fact that the country was completely disconnected from the world. For the first time in years, to have silent comms on all my social media from my family and country was really devastating. So in terms of what that meant for my family in country, it meant without internet connectivity, they had no ability to call for help or emergency services. Once things actually calmed down, the amount of debris, infrastructure damage, as well as volcanic ash covering land masses and the sea, meant that there was a complete halt on the economy. No one could go to work, you couldn't go to school, there was no ability to work or learn from home. And also, it meant that family couldn't send remittances to islands that are heavily dependent on remittances for a majority of their GDPs. So with numerous extreme weather incidents like this one occurring on the regular across the entire region, these are some of the key challenges that are top of mind for the region. This vulnerability is what adds to the urgency in the Pacific to act in whatever way they can to improve its resilience and ensure that they use this opportunity of strategic competition to their advantage. In terms of what the opportunities are, though, this is a really great time actually for Australia and New Zealand to step up and take a global, international role in terms of helping the Pacific with the challenges faced by climate. In order to address these challenges, the islands will require greater economic resiliency, and what this means is greater connectivity. As the Tonga volcano showed, we cannot rely solely on fibre cables in areas with unstable tectonic plates. With the growth of satellite constellations also providing internet and other capabilities, technology, especially when partnered with emergent AI tech, has the capacity to provide significant uplift to the region. By also leveraging the enormous Pacifica diaspora that's in Australia, Australia is perfectly positioned to provide this uplift. And critically, together we can lay the foundations to enhance our joint regional security.
Mary, what motivated you to move into the space and technology sector? I'm fascinated.
Well, my brilliant husband works in the space sector, so he's here in the room somewhere. Hello. Yeah, so I think, look, for me, through exposure to his work, I just saw all the innovative things that were happening in the space sector from government and private sector. So I'd look over at him and he was working on projects with the likes of Pam Melroy, who's the Deputy Administrator of NASA now, scientists from JPL working on the last or most recent Mars rover that went out, and as well as what was happening in the Australian space startup sector. So you have the likes of HEO Robotics, who are here at the moment, and Leo Labs, both space situational awareness companies, using different forms of technology, Earth orbit, Earth observation satellites for one, and AI, and radar and AI for the other. And I just kind of thought, wow, how cool. I want to be a part of that sector. Because I actually pivoted from commercial REITs, real estate investment trusts. So, when I was looking at the people I was working with, it was like property developers and fund managers, investment bankers, and I just thought, that's really no competition. So essentially I kind of just looked at all the different companies that I was potentially interested in and aligned values-wise. And the company that really struck a chord with me was Kacific Broadband Satellites.
That was my next question, was can you explain what Kacific do and how they engage in the region? I'm sure the audience would be keen to hear more.
Yeah, definitely. So, look, Kacific provide connectivity to the most disconnected and underserved regions of the world, or will once our entire geo constellation are up. So the way we do that is we own and operate satellites. Boeing built our current satellite that's up about above Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. And, in terms of what we focus on, there's 3 ESG pillars that the company focuses on, providing connectivity for educational uses, healthcare, as well as disaster relief. And emergency response, which is a prevalent need in the Pacific. And so for me, in terms of wanting to work for a company that had great social impact as well as commerciality, this was a company that works in the region of my heritage. And so just to ensure that they actually engaged meaningfully, I had these great discussions with Christian, and I actually found out Christian's the CEO and founder, that the reason he wanted to start the company is because working with other satellite operators and telecom companies, they just didn't care about the regions that weren't going to provide as much profit. And so he went out, raised about $500,000 pre-seed funding, and thought, where is the most disconnected place in the world where he can go and develop an MVP? And that's how he ended up in the Pacific. Tested and iterated the MVP and signed up the first customers in the Pacific region. And it's actually where our name comes from. We use a Ka band frequency, developed the company in the Pacific, and just kind of brought that together.
Nice. So as someone who works for a satellite company, what are 1 to 2 emerging technology trends in your sector? And then tell us about how you plan to leverage those.
I guess from a Kacific perspective, we're currently commissioning our 2nd satellite, which is pretty interesting and cool. So in terms of what type of technology that satellite will be taking on, it'll be a software-defined satellite. And so essentially also going into geo. What that means essentially is that the satellite architecture can be reconfigured in orbit to change our coverage. And this is enabled by a phased array active antenna, which I think is being used more commonly But essentially what that means is greater flexibility. So our current, I guess the standard satellite architecture is that it's based on hardware. Kacific 1 satellite that we have up in geo at the moment has fixed beams. So we have 56 beams across the Pacific and Southeast Asia. And we cannot change or move capacity to meet demand. So the K2 capability of the SDS satellite essentially means that we can leverage that flexibility and, one, meet higher traffic whenever it spikes across the region we cover, but importantly, in times of natural disasters, where you have an example like Tonga where they get completely cut off, we can immediately redirect beams and capacity to ensure that they are connected in order to get the type of emergency services in country.
Thinking about younger people and the non-government sector and the approaches that they bring to government, especially in the context of development and infrastructure assistance, can you talk about your approach to culturally sensitive and appropriate engagement?
Yeah, look, I'd like to address this probably specifically from the perspective of Pacific Islander youth and the diaspora, because I think in terms of really cultivating and building long-term relationships, the Australian and having the Australian government put their best foot forward in the region. Really, nothing beats having people from in-country plus those within the diaspora, like myself, because we have a lived experience, deep understanding of the culture and landscape, and so we're kind of already starting off in a better position. And so I guess, look, when I look at organisations or departments whose teams are responsible for policies or projects that go into the Pacific Islands, I don't see any Pacific Island faces, and that's a problem. And it's also a missed opportunity because there is such a large Pacific Island diaspora in Australia. And, we're intricately linked with the islands through heritage, through family ties, and also through remittances. So the majority of us send money as a recurring debit that's been coming out of my account since I started working. But ultimately, remittances actually constitute a good majority, well, about 50%, say in Tonga, of the national GDP. So we're already, I guess, actively involved in the Pacific. And so I think sometimes when I say this to different companies, you're not hiring people from the region, I get answers like, oh, but no one of that heritage applied, or no, they weren't competitive. And, that's just really kind of lazy and archaic HR and recruitment processes. But, in order to counter that, I actually created this not-for-profit, the Pacific Professionals Network, which brings together Pacifica professionals together as a network, and also to provide mentoring to the next generation to help them through their careers. And so, just from our membership base, for example, there's 2 tech CEOs who immediately were on the ground in terms of tech drives, as well as fundraisers to help with the Tonga recovery efforts. We have another tech CEO for a cybersecurity company who I think is here today, Mike, who has set up an office in Samoa, where he's from, in order to help stimulate the economy there and provide educational uplift. So yeah, it's a really great opportunity for Australia to tap into.
Yeah, it sounds great. Where's the future of technology heading, and how can we ensure it's more inclusive and representative of the needs of developing countries?
So to answer this question, I'm just going to borrow a quote from a friend in the crowd today, who said to me once, "Give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to code and he'll build an AI fish farm that feeds the whole village." And
well said.
So I think what that really leads into is the fact that the need for education is indisputable. The future of tech, specifically AI, holds so much potential for the islands. But to ensure that it's realised, we have to focus on, what are the inclusive, the ways that it can be inclusive, And this means catering to the unique needs and challenges and cultural contexts of the region. In the case of the Pacific Islands, we know that people are eager to participate, but often find themselves unable to due to geographical isolation, limited resources, and also just a lack of tailored educational options. So we probably need to do a few things. One, culturally targeted technology education. So developing these programs that take into consideration local context, languages, which will ultimately produce a more diverse and innovative tech sector. Two is building the actual digital infrastructure. So supporting the growth of local technology ecosystems, providing the connectivity, high-speed internet, and this will help to reduce the digital divide that's occurring. And three is fostering regional collaboration. So encouraging partnerships with trusted nations like Australia and New Zealand. We share common cause with the Pacific, and ultimately we share the same problems, and so our responses should be coordinated. And then finally, it really is just tapping into the Pacific Island diaspora to ensure that they're involved in leading, designing, and implementing these types of solutions.
Fantastic. Well, we've got 2 minutes left. Was there any final closing comments or call to action that you wanted to leave the audience with? Probably given them a lot to think about already.
Yeah, look, I think I've kind of covered it, but essentially, look at climate security and connectivity and resilient connectivity systems are key to enabling this region to actually just be included. We've had some amazing talks already, and I just feel like sometimes they're so far ahead of, and it's just all those things are enabled by just these bare minimum things that the region needs in order to, well, one, participate, but also, bringing them into ensuring that the Pacific are part of, as the government foreign department says, part of the family, so as to speak.
Bringing them along for the journey.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mary.
No worries.
Thank you. Please thank Mary for her session.